Right, so yeah, good to be back. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Artisan. Today we're going to create this application right here. It's called Task App or a to-do list app. So these are all tasks that I'm supposed to be doing. Some have been completed and some are pending. You can go ahead and create a task by clicking here on this link right here. So we have our Navbar right here, and I can also do the same by clicking this button down here. So I can either click this link here or this button down here, and if I click that, it takes me to the create task page where I have a text area, a submit, and a cancel button. If I decide to cancel, and then going to take me back to the index page, which is the home page. If I want to create a task, I can click on create and Laravel like that, and I can submit. It shows me that this is a pending task, and let's say I've finished this task and I'm done. I can click on completed right here, and then that task is moved down here. You can see now it shows completed, and I can go ahead and delete that task once it's completed, and you can no longer see that task right here. So basically this is how our application will work. By the way, I'm going to use Laravel, and so I'll use PHP for the backend. I'll also use Blade for the front end, as well as Bootstrap. To start creating that application, we need to set up our development environment, and I have a video on how you can set up your development environment. I'll leave a link in the description, and I'll also leave a card here or right here. We are going to be using XAMPP, so I have my XAMPP control panel open. You can see right here I have my Apache and my SQL running. So I'm going to go to my XAMPP folder on my computer right here. This is where I'm going to create my application. So inside my htdocs, open that folder, and right here, this is where we're going to create our application. I'm going to open this in the terminal, and we are inside htdocs. For us to create Laravel applications, we need Composer. So you can run Composer -V to see whether you have Composer installed on your computer. And if you do have, like I have right here, now we can go ahead and install Laravel. So for us to install Laravel, we go to the documentation. You need to rely on the documentation all the time. Laravel.com/docs, and go to getting started here, and then installation. On the installation, there's a command that you can run, creating a Laravel project. Composer, create project Laravel, and then the name of your application. Or you could use this second one, but I prefer the first one because this is just one command. And so in our terminal right here, I'm going to say Composer, create -project, and then Laravel /Laravel, and then the name of our project, which I'm going to call task-list. I'll fast forward this so that you don't have to wait while I'm doing the installation. Okay, so it looks like we have finished the installation. So in case you do not have MySQL or any other kind of database, you could use the default one, which is SQLite. But in my case, I'm going to be using MySQL, which is part of XAMPP. This is why we installed XAMPP. Let me clear this right now. And so we're going to cd into task list, which is the project that we just created. So cd means change directory, and now we are inside the task list. You can see right here, we want to open this project inside our Visual Studio Code, so we can say code dot and go ahead and click enter. And so you can see there are quite a number of directories here. If you want to get an idea of what all these directories are all about, and look at the documentation, which is this part here, it says directory structure. There is an introduction to all of these directories, but we'll tackle each directory as we come across it. All right, so the next thing is how do we get our project to run in the browser? A command utility that we can use to run certain commands, including saving this application in the browser, is called the Artisan. And I'm going to run an Artisan command. It's PHP Artisan serve, and then it's going to save this application in the browser. So if I hit enter, and you see we have our default application which comes with Laravel, and we have successfully installed Laravel. We need to change what we are seeing right here. In your project folder, you'll find there's a folder called resources. So go to resources, views. This is where we are getting all this information that we're seeing right here. If you go into this file, I want you to delete everything, select everything, and then hit backspace. We're going to create a default page right here. So let me create boilerplate. I'm going to name this our task app, which is our task app. In the body, I'm going to put an H4 tag which says all tasks. So if I'm to save this and go back and refresh, you can see now we can see all tasks right here. So basically this page right here is what's being saved right now in the browser. The next thing is, let's go inside our route and check out this web.php. So open this web.php. You can see this is where our page, this view, is being saved. It's being saved on this route right here, which is just / which is our home route, which is just localhost 8000. On this route, this is where we're going to be displaying our tasks. We also need to create tasks, update tasks, delete tasks. Okay, so for us to be able to read tasks right here inside our welcome.blade.php, this is where we're going to change a few things. So go to my bootstrap. Let me see, get bootstrap right here. We want to look for a card. So go to components and then go to card right here. And so we want to use one of the cards. Let me copy this, and in here I'm going to paste this right here. So if I'm to save and go back to my page, refresh, you can see now we have some kind of a card, but it has been stripped of all the styling. Of course, it's not looking like this one. So how do we get it to be styled like that? Let's go to introduction, and we have to include bootstrap library right here, this link here. So I'm going to copy this in our project, in the head, just before the title. We can paste this, we can word wrap right here. You can see after inclusion of this, if I save this, refresh the page, we are supposed to see the styling. So now you can see now we have that styling. That's how you can use Bootstrap. You just need to include that link and you're good to go. Or you could just go to W3 Schools right here and go to the get started, and there will be a link, I'm sure, right here, so you can copy this and include it and you're good to go. All right, so each one of these cards is going to contain a single task. So if we have multiple tasks, we're going to have multiple cards. So what we can do is, for now, I'm going to remove, let me see, we don't want this featured right here. Also don't want the H5. We're not going to be needing that. Basically, that's all we need right now. So if I'm to save and refresh, this will be the task content and some kind of a button down here. In Bootstrap, we can include a div with a class called container. So I'll say container like this, and then I'll wrap all this inside that class. So up to here, down here, and then paste it, and then save it, and then go back, and then check it out. And so now you can see now we have spaces on either ends of this. It's looking better now. And yeah, and here we can show dynamic content. So we can use what we call blade directives. So we can say it for each. And obviously we want to put this card in this for each right here. Let me see, inside here. This is where we want to put this. We can say range. You can use the range function. There's a range function in PHP. So 1 to 5 is, let's say, $next, some kind of a variable. And then we can display dynamic content right here. We can say $next dash double curly brackets. This is how we display dynamic content. This is the Blade templating language that we're now using. That's why we have to use that extension .blade.php. And in here we can create some kind of a fake data. So I'm going to create fake text. So I will say text right here. By the way, I'm getting all this from the helper functions. They are what we call helper functions in Laravel. So if you go to your documentation and look for helpers right here, you'll find there are helper methods that you can use. So the one that I'm using right now is the fake, which is this one right here. And so we can create a fake name, an email, etc., etc. But I'm creating fake text. So that's what I'm doing right here. So if I'm to save this and go back to my page now and refresh, we're assuming that these are tasks. They are not the actual tasks. They're just text, which is fake. I'm generating multiple of them by using this for each right here and using the range function. So if I want maybe up to 20, I could say here up to 20, and it's going to generate up to 20. If I reload, you can see now we have up to 20 right here. There are no spaces between these cards, so we need to put some space. We can put a margin bottom or 5. This, by the way, this is a bootstrap class. Refresh, you can see now there are spaces between these cards. So we're going to convert this to completed, and we can check that out. We can see if we refresh, and we are good. So we created our display right here. We can display our tasks, but of course we're getting fake data right here. We are going to be displaying the actual tasks later on, but we have our functionality working now. So the next part is, how do we create our tasks? So the way we create our tasks is we're going to present a form, and then the user can enter their task there, and then they can store that in the database. And so we're going to create a route right here, get, of course they have to get that form, and it's going to go to /create -task. Of course, I'm just making this up. You can name this whatever you want, but it makes sense to call it create task. And then we're going to have a function here, which is an anonymous function, which is also called a closure. And then we're going to return something here. Obviously, we're going to return some kind of a view, but of course, we haven't created that view yet. So what I'm going to do here in the views, I'm going to create a view called create.blade.php, which is the one that we're going to return here. So in here, I'm going to say quotation create, which is this view that we have created just now. So in here, we're going to create our form, and this is where we're going to get this here. So to create a form, I need to go to Bootstrap Forms, and then I want this. And I think this text area looks good. So let me check this out. Okay, it's this form right here. So I'm going to copy this thing. Let me copy that and then paste it in our create.blade.php. So paste that in here, and we are good. We have our form right here. Let me put semicolon right here. So if we go to this route right here, we're supposed to see a form. So let me try and go to that route. Of course, we are not going to submit to this. Let me just clear this for now. And then we're also going to have a method in here, method, which we're going to say post, because we'll be posting this data here to this route, which we're going to put here. But for now, we do not have that. So let's just leave it blank. But let's visit this route right here and see whether we can get our form. So /create-task, and then hit enter. You can see we're getting our form right here, but of course it does not have the styling because it's not utilizing these styles right here. So what I can do is I need to include some kind of a layout in my application. In that layout, we have every part which is going to be common in all my pages. So inside my views, I'm going to create another view here, which I'm going to call layout blade.php, like that. And so inside here, we're going to cut up to the container because all of my pages are going to include this thing right here. So I'm going to cut this and then paste it inside here, and also this down here. Cut this and then paste it right here. And then in here, inside container class, I'm going to say add yield. This is the Blade templating language that I'm using right now, content. So here I can say add extends. We're extending this layout right here, so I can say layout in quotation marks like that. All right, so this is going to extend the layout, but where in the layout am I going to put this thing? This is where we specified the yield here, and the yield is called content. So I can say here add section. This is also another Blade templating language. That's why we need that .blade.php. Here we're going to say content. So we're going to place it here where it says content. So whatever you name this is what you're going to pass in this section. So with this done, if I save and refresh, we're supposed to see no difference here on this welcome.blade. So we're going to do the same for the create. So we're going to say add extends layout, which is the layout that we have, and add section. And then we need to end that section, and so I will just remove this end and then paste it at the end. And then here we need to specify where, and then we say it's called content right here. So if I am to save this now, if I go to this create task, refresh, we can see now the styling is now being applied because we are now making use of this layout in both our pages. Let me rename this welcome to home.blade.php. So let me save that. Let me go back here and remove this welcome and change it to home. Exactly the name of this. So if I'm to save and refresh, nothing changes. In the create, there are two verbs that we have to use. We have to use get, which is going to get our form, which is this create. And after we get our form, once we complete this form, we need to do something with this information that we have entered in this form. That's where we need to create another route. So I'll say route is a post route. Whatever route we're going to specify here is the one that we need to put on our action right here. We're going to post it to the task. This one you can name it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. You can then specify a function, and this function is going to do something. Whatever you name right here, you name this route, is what you're going to put on this action here. So it's /task to post our data. Let me put that semicolon. I always forget that. If we post our data, I want to return data has been posted, just like that, to see whether it's working or not. So let me refresh and write some gibberish right here. Submit. Of course, I was expecting this 4119 page expired. 4119 page expired is specific for Laravel. We need to include something here when we are posting our forms. It's called a CSRF token. We use this at CSRF. So once we do this, we are good. Now we can post data to our server because we're not just allowed to post data without this CSRF. I think we need to refresh again, and then let me write something here, submit, and so you can see now it says data has been posted right here, and it's being posted to this /task. However, we're not going to be doing this. We're not going to return that. We need to have access to this, and then we store that in our database. How can we access this data? We can go to the documentation and look for helpers. Inside our helpers, there's a method called request right here. The request function returns the current request instance and obtains an input field's value from the current request. So we can get the input value from this request. Yeah, this is the input value, which is our text area. This is where we are putting the text that we are posting. So I'm going to call this task, but that's what we're trying to post to the server. So we can access this task here by using the request. Which is a function. It's a helper function. By the way, these functions, which are called helpers, are globally available in our application. We do not have to refer anything to have access to these functions. Let's DD this. DD is also another helper function, which can dump whatever value we are getting. We can be able to see what value we are getting. So let's see what we're getting from this request. So once we post this, we want to get access to that information that we have posted. And so this is how we do it. So let me refresh and say hello people right here, and let me submit. You can see what we're getting. This is the request. This is this thing right here. This function here is giving us that thing. And so inside our request right here, we have our parameters. This is where we can see, you can see here it says hello people, which is the task. This task right here, this is what we're getting. And so that's the value of the task. That's why we need to pass this name attribute here. Otherwise, you won't be able to get that information. And of course, our token is generated by this thing here, which is at CSRF. This is what is generating the token. So that's why we're able to send this data. And so we need to access this. For us to access this, we could access it by just referencing this task here in our web.php. Inside this request here, we could just put quotation marks and then say task, which is exactly this value right here. And so if we are to save and rerun that thing again, let me go back, refresh, and put some gibberish and submit, and you can see now we can have access to that gibberish. If we are able to access this value, we can then use it for whatever we want to use it for. We could also access this value right here by using the request object, and we can use a variable called request here, and still we can access this information. So we could access that $request right here. But now we are no longer using that function. We are now using this object right here. But of course, we need to import this. If I right click and say import class, it's within the HTTP right here. Illuminate HTTP, this request right here. Illuminate HTTP request. That's the one we are using right here. And if I save again, refresh and write something here, the request object, submit. You can see now we are getting that request object, and same we have these, and you can see the task is from the request object. And so that's how you can access that. So it's a question of preference whether you want to use this thing right here or you want to use the method. I think the method is quite easy, the global method. So let me just use that global method, which is just requests and then parentheses like this. And so what we can do is we can validate this. What we are validating is our task, and we can then validate it using strings, or we can use an array like this. And so we're going to say that is going to be required max or 255 characters. Yeah, I think that's all. We can assign this to a variable data, okay, or we can call it task, whatever you want to call it. We can then dd again, refresh, and then write something again, gibberish, and let's submit. And dd undefined constant. Oh, okay, the way I'm doing it here, how did I, this is a function, my brother. So data, this is not an array, backspace, refresh this one, submit, and you can see now we're getting our task here as an array, and we can then use it in the database. All right, so before we add this data in the database, of course, we need to create what we call a model. Laravel uses what we call an MVC architecture. So before then, we need to get into our env, this one, the env file right here. Open that. We need to specify our database variables. So we need to have our connection, and this is not SQLite, this is going to be MySQL. And then we're going to access this on the local host, which is just similar to 127. And then the port, I'm going to look at my port is 4306, not 33. So check out your port, and mine is 43, and then we're going to uncomment that. The database, I'm going to name it task dash list, just like that, and uncomment that. And then this one, uncomment, and I do not have a password. And so yeah, you have to set these environment variables right here. These are your app secrets. So if I save this, and now our application can now connect to the database. Let me close this out. So we need to create a model. For us to create a model, I'm going to open another terminal here, because this one is where our application is running. So I need another one here. So we can say PHP Artisan make model, and then we specify the model. The model is going to be the singular of your database table. Your database table is going to be called tasks. The singular of that is going to be task, a capital letter T. And if I hit that, you can see now we have our task model created inside our app, our models, and then our task. We have this one right here. All right, we have our model. Now we can interact with our database, but we haven't created our database table. For us to create our database table, we need to run a migration. So in our documentation, let's check for migration, database migration right here. Open that. So for us to create a migration file, we need to run this command PHP Artisan make migration, and then the name of the table that we're trying to generate. We're trying to generate a task table. Let me just copy this command inside here, paste it, and then you have to say create underscore tasks. That's the name of the table that we're trying to create, and then we specify that it's going to be a table. And so Laravel will infer and use these tasks as the name of the table. Inside your database and inside your migrations, we're supposed to see another migration file right here. For now, there are just 3 migration files, but we're supposed to see a 4th one if I run this command. So let me run that. You see down here, it says create tasks table. Let's open this file and see what is in there. So this file contains schema create, which is going to create a tasks table. And of course, we have a down function right here, which is going to drop our table in case we want to drop it from the database. So in here, we're going to create an extra column. So these are columns, by the way, right here. We have an ID, it auto increments, and then we have these timestamps, which is going to create the created at and updated at. And so here we can say table. By the way, we are using this blueprint table right here. That's what we're using to create our columns. It's going to be a string. This is going to be the type of data that we are creating. You can find more about this by going to the columns of your table, of your database. So I'm currently on string right here, this one. So a string is going to be a method that creates a varchar equivalent, which is going to create 255 characters. And so we can name this task. So whatever you put in the parenthesis is going to be the name. And once I save this, my SQL here and then go to admin, is going to open your PHP My Admin right here. So here you are supposed to create your database, but we're not going to use that route. What we can do is we can just run migration, and then it's going to prompt us to create a new database if it does not exist. So I can say PHP Artisan migrate. What this command does is create the actual tables in the database. If I hit enter right now, you can see now it says the database task does not exist on the MySQL connection. Would you like to create it? Getting this from the name of the application. So I'll say yes down here, and if I hit enter, now you can see we have migrated all these files right here, these migration files. So if I'm to go to the database and refresh, I'm supposed to see the task list database, which is right here. So if I open that, you can see now I have all these migrations, including my tasks, which is this table right here. If I open that, you can see we have ID, task, created it, and updated it, which is exactly these columns right here. This timestamps is the one that creates, created at, and updated it. And the others is the ID and the task that we created right here. So we now have our database and we are ready to populate that database. So this is where we need this task model. So for us to use this model, we can use it inside our web.php right here. Task, which is the model. We can use a create method on that model. This model right here, you could be asking, where is that create method here? We cannot see it here in the class. It's coming from this inherited class, which is called model. So I can say $data right here to populate our database. I need to import this class right here. So I'll right click and say import class, and it's this class right here. Or you could just go to this and then copy this thing right here. You can say use and then paste that, and then /, of course, and then the name of the class, which is task. So let's try this out, refresh, and then let's say our first task. So let's submit that, and we have an error right here. Yeah, I knew that was coming. We need to add this property here in our model. Is a property that is called fillable. Let me take you to the documentation. Let me go to our models here, eloquent models. Let me look for mass assignment. Oh, it's right here, mass assignment. If we are using the create method to save a new model in our web.php right here, we're using this create to try and save a new model. We have to put this in our model class, which is the fillable property. So I'm going to copy that, and we have to put it inside our task.php. Control V, and then we can assign as an array of the values that we want to mass assign. If you go to your migration file, it's this value here, the task. It has to be the same. And so we can say inside our task.php, it's called task right here. Of course, don't forget this semicolon right here. So if I'm to save this, obviously, and now go back to our application and go back and refresh, and write our first task right here, and then we submit this. We're supposed to see this in our database. You can see we are returning nothing. We are not returning anything here after we save our task, but if we go into our database, we're supposed to see this. Let's check out our database. Let me refresh this. You can see our first task is here in our database. It says our first task right here with updated at and created at. And so here, after we save our task, we want to return to the home page. So we can return a redirect. There's a redirect, and then we can use /. So once we save our task, we're going to be redirected to the home page. We have finished creating our tasks. We want to display those tasks. So we want to get rid of that dummy data that we're using in our home.blade.php right here. We are using this text which is fake. And so we want to get rid of that and display the tasks that we are creating. And so let's refresh again and add another task. Second task. Now if I submit, I'm supposed to be redirected to the home page. So let's see. Submit, and you can see I'm being redirected to the home page right here. But we are not displaying those tasks. We're supposed to see our tasks here. So the way we do it is here, because we are accessing this task model right here, right? So we can access the tasks by saying task : all. There's a method on that called the all method, and then we can access all the tasks here. We want to name these tasks. And the way we can access it in our view is we pass in a second argument in our view method here, which is going to be an associative array. So we can say an associative array, and the key is going to be tasks. But this key can be named anything. You can name it anything, and it's going to have a value of the tasks that we're getting from this task model. So it's going to be $tasks. Right, so whatever this value is the one that you're going to be using in your views. So in our home blade, we want to get hold of this tasks. So usually it's common practice that whatever this is the name that you give to this, but you can name it whatever you want. I can name it to-dos right now. So this has to be this. So we're going to get hold of these to-dos. That's what we're going to use in our home.blade.php. So instead of saying for each range here, I'm saying for each to-dos as to-do. By the way, this is how we create variables in PHP. We use a $sign. We can then display this to-do here. So to-do. So if I save this, I'm supposed to see the to-dos that I have currently. So if I'm to refresh, you can see we have two to-dos. You can see right here and right here. But what we're getting is we're getting the whole object, right? We're getting the ID, the task, and created. So we need to get this task here, this value of the task. So how we access that here, we can just say arrow and specify that we want the task specifically. So if I'm to refresh again, now you can see we are getting that value, which is exactly what we have in our database, our task and second task. This is the latest task that we have, but we're not showing them by that order in our application here. The latest is second. It's supposed to be at the top. We can do that by using the latest. There's a latest method that we can use. You cannot use all now. You have to say get. So we are saying get the latest tasks. If I refresh, we're supposed to get the second task first. You see now the second task is first, and then our first task is second. The latest one has to be first. And the next thing is we want to be able to separate whether it's completed or it's not completed. If a task is completed, we need to display that is completed right here. We need some kind of a badge. So I'm going to grab a badge and then put it here inside this class right here. So let's look for a badge. We can look for a badge right here, badges. I think I need the badge info, this one. I need that one. Let me copy that. I'll just copy that, and then I'll put it inside this, after the to-do, inside the P, where I'm displaying the to-do right here. Let me word rep, and then I'm going to change this from info to just pending. I would say this is pending. It hasn't been completed yet, and so if I'm to rerun this, reload, you can see now this second task is pending and that one is pending as well. We could center all this. I think this design is way better than the one I showed you earlier on. We could center this by saying text dash center, so it centers everything. So I think this one is a better one. All right, so after having done this, we need to be able to update tasks. We are updating these tasks not by changing these texts here. We are updating them by the completed. If they are completed, we want to display them in a different way. If they are not, they should be displayed in this way. We're going to add an extra column in our database table. So if you look at our table right here, you now have data in your database, and you cannot just delete everything and start afresh. You can update your database table without removing the information that is already there. You're going to run this command right here. Let me locate this command. This one, which is PHP Artisan make migration, add description to tasks table. So let me just copy this command right here and paste that. So I want to add an extra column, which I'm going to call completed, to tasks underscore table. Like this. There's an option to specify the table here, but without this also this will work as well. So if I run this, you see a new migration file has been created. So if I am to go database migrations, and you can see it says add completed to this. If we go in there, you can see a new migration file has been created. So I want to add a column here, so I'm going to say table, and the column that I want to add is timestamp, not timestamps, and the name is going to be is underscore completed. So we are adding it to the same table, which is the tasks table, and I need to specify that this can be nullable so that it can work for the existing data, because I have data in this table. So it can just put that now in the existing data, or you could specify a default value so that it can be used for existing values. And then down here we need to drop a column. So let me search up here, drop column here. So we need to specify the drop column, and then we pass in an array if we're dropping more than one, or if we're dropping just one, we could just pass in that as a string, the name of the column. So I'm going to say here table drop column. I'm going to specify that as an array, and then the name of the column that I would want to drop in case is called is completed, like that, and then save. And then I'm going to run migrations again. So I'm going to say PHP Artisan migrate, and if I run this, it's going to update my tasks table in the database. So if I'm to refresh, you can see now we have an is completed right here as a new column, and it's assigned a value of now because we specified that it can be nullable. And then with this done, I'm going to go into my task here, and I'm going to create a function that we're going to use for our models, public, and then I'm going to call it is completed. This function is supposed to return a boolean value, so it's going to return, we can use this is underscore completed. This column right here is not equal to null, which is a value that we can have in PHP. So we can use this function on each and every model. So to update, we need to surround this button in a form. So we put this inside that form at CSRF, and then we're going to specify a method as well. I'm going to use patch. That's the method that I'm going to use, and we cannot specify it here. We cannot specify that we're going to patch because it's not supported, I think, by HTTP. It does not support that, and so we specify it in here. That's what Laravel allows us to do. We want to change that value of is completed, and so here we can say / update / and then we can specify the to do. We want that to do's ID right here, and this has to be a button, by the way, not an a tag. Can be a button or input. We need a type of submit here, submit, so that it can submit this form right here that is inside here. Oh, let me save that and go back to our web.php. So here we're going to create a route. So route : the method is patch. We're going to patch that, and then the route is update / and then ID. This is how we get this parameter right here. By using curly brackets, we're passing that ID and our function, then we pass in that ID into our function, and then we can then retrieve that. So to retrieve that, we're going to say task. We're using the model now, and then we're going to find, there's a method called find, and then we're going to find the task with a specific ID, which we have passed here, which we would have passed here in our route. This is going to be data. You can name it whatever you want. I'm just calling it data. This data, we want that property is completed, and we're going to assign it to a function code now. We can check this out right here in the helpers right here, and now this now right here. So this now function creates a new instance for the current time. So that's what we want. After we patch it, we invoke the save method, and then we return a redirect to the home page. So we are updating our task right here. So this has to be / update, and this has to be the same as what is inside here, which is this update and the ID. Of course, we are getting the ID of the to-do that we are working on. So if we click on any to-do, it's going to pass its own ID here, which we're going to get in here, and then we're going to find that and then update the is completed, and then we're good. So let's check this out. Is completed, that's what we have exactly. And so let me save this and refresh. Unexpected end of file, syntax error. Let me see where. Home to do tasks. Let me see, I messed up. Okay, right here. Let me save that. We're good. Refresh. And if I click this, this is supposed to change. This is supposed to be updated to the current time. If I click on completed, let's look at our database now. If we refresh, you can see now this has been updated. You see this time now. We're going to use this to change the display. So now we can access that. If it's completed, we want to do something with this. So from here, inside the card, add if, and then else, and if right here. If $to-do is completed. Of course, this is what we created in our task here. This one, this is what we're accessing. If it's completed, we want to do something, but of course, this is what we're going to cut and put in the else block. I'm supposed to put this after this. If the to-do is completed, let me copy this thing, everything that is here, and paste it in here, because we need the card body here as well. So here, instead of pending completed, instead of being an info button, we're going to have it as a success button. And then we don't need any form around this thing right here. We just need a button which says delete, and it's not going to be button primary, it's going to be button danger, which is red. So if I save and go back and refresh, this is what we have now for our tasks. We want our completed tasks to be at the bottom, so we could, inside our web.php, when accessing our tasks here, we could say here order by. So we're going to order them by is completed. This column here is completed. We want to order them by is _ completed. And then we get latest and then get. Let me save this and see if it's going to work. Refresh. Now you can see now those that have been completed have been pushed downwards. So exactly this is what we want right here. Now we have implemented the update, and we need to implement the delete. The delete is quite easy. We need to copy all this, the form. Of course, we need a form when we are performing a delete. So I'm going to use this right here. And of course, I should have just left it here. And then I'm going to paste it right here. And we say this is going to be a delete, right? Delete. And the button is button danger. And we are going to delete here, not updating now. We're going to delete. This is the action. And instead of patching, we are going to delete as well. Delete like that, and the method is still post. We need to post, but we're in the process. We're going to delete. Now we need to create a route. So we're going to say route colon, and then the method is delete that we're going to use, and we're going to /update / curly bracket, and then we pass in the ID. And then here we're going to say function and then we pass in that ID, so $ID, and then task : find by ID, or we can call it data or task, it's all up to you. And then we can delete this task, so we can say task $task, and then there's a delete method that we can use here, and then after we delete, we can return a redirect to the home page, just like that. Okay, so if I'm to save, I always forget this semicolon right here. Okay, if we are to do that, and if I'm to refresh and hit on delete, we're not supposed to say this, hit on delete, 404 not found. Okay, it's because we said update here. We're supposed to say delete right here, not update. You refresh. Let me hit delete, and you can see right here that task has been deleted, and so we no longer have that task. And we can complete this. After we complete, we can delete. We still need to create links to access the create page, because right now we have to go here, up here, and say create a dash task, which is not the best way to access the create page. So let me see another task here, and if we hit submit, and you can see we have another task there. We need to create that. So down here, I'm going to create a button, the home page, which is this home page right here. After the for each down here, I want to put a button here, bootstrap button. I want to put this dark button here. So let me copy this thing, copy, paste it. I'm going to put it as a link. You can use this as a link as well. You use those classes on a link. So it's going to be a link, and it's going to say create a task. Can I have an href, which is going to take us to / create dash task, like that. So if I'm to save and run this, you can see now we have a create task button down here. If I click on that, it takes us to this page right here. And then on the other page, the create, we need a button to take us back. So I'm going to copy this thing right here. It's going to be a link as well. And then here, down here, underneath that button, paste that is going to take us to the home. And then it's going to be a button danger. It's going to be a red button, and then it's going to say cancel. So if I save, refresh, create task, you can see now we have a cancel. If I cancel, it takes me back to the home page. If I create, please am here, and if I submit, it takes me back here, and you can see it says please am here, and it's pending. If I say completed, then it's going to be displayed down here, and now you can remove this, and it's going to display completed, and I can say delete, and it's deleted like that. So basically this is the functionality. So all we need to do is we want to put a navbar here. So navbar, quite easy to do. Navbar W3 schools, I think this will give me a better navbar. Oh, it's right here. So let me copy this nav and everything, copy that. So inside our layout, this is where we're going to put our navbar, because it's going to show up on each and every page. So this is the beauty of creating a layout, because we can do it only in one place. Otherwise, we're going to put this navbar in here and then in the home, but we can do it in the layout. So I'm going to paste that. The nav, if I'm to save, you see the nav on each and every page now. So if I refresh, you can see we have a navbar right here, but we want that to be dark. So here it says if we want to use the dark one, we can use this thing right here. So I'm just going to copy that and replace this thing right here. Control V, save, and if we go back, refresh, you can see now we have our navbar. We need a margin bottom for the navbar because there's no space. So I can use an MB here, MB-5, and it's going to put that margin bottom of 5 right here. You can see now there's space, and we need to remove most of these links right here. Disabled, we don't want that. So we don't want this li right and this li right. We don't need these two, and we are left with one nav item, which is going to be create tasks. And with that create tasks, we're going to say it's going to take us to / create dash task. Let me see, is that the route, which is this one? Yeah, it's the route, it's just task. And then this one is going to be task app, which is our task application, and it's going to take us to the just / which is our home. So if I save that and refresh, and now we're good. You can see now we can create task. We can go, if we click on task app, we are on the home page. If we click on create task, it takes us to the create task. So we can say we have completed this tutorial, like that, and if we submit, you can see we have completed this tutorial, completed, and now it's pushed down here, and we can delete this. We are done with our task. Delete that, and we cannot see it right here. We are good. And yeah, this is deleting in the database as well. If you look at your database now, refresh, you have 2 tasks only, and you can add on space down here on this one. Let me see, it's inside here. This one, I can say margin, so I'll put a class here with margin bottom of 3. Yes, so I want to put space down here. Refresh, and see now there's some space down here, and we are good. So this is our application. You can add other features if you want, but basically this is how you create, read, update, and delete data using Laravel. We have done it all in one file, which is our web.php. However, the standard practice is you need to separate this logic from this web.php file. This is done by creating what we call a controller. So it's going to take the name of whatever you're trying to control. We're trying to control tasks. That file is going to be called task controller. So we can create that by running PHP Artisan make controller, and then we can say task controller, right? So it's going to create a file inside our controllers. So our controllers are inside HTTP and then controllers here. So let me run that. If I run that, you can see we have a task controller right here. So what we can do now is we can move this logic right here. I'm going to cut that and then put it inside the task controller here. So this is for displaying, right? Let me comment it here. Displaying tasks. And then I can paste it right here. So we need to name this to public. By the way, this first part, which is public, is called access modifier. I'm going to call this display. You can name it whatever you want. You can name it index, home, whatever name you want. And it's a public function, which means it can be accessed outside of this class. And so what we need to do now to use this inside our web.php, we create an array, and then we specify the controller class, which is task controller, and then we say : class, and then we specify the name of the method that we want to access, which is display in our case. So inside here we called it display right here. So if I am to refresh, I'm supposed to still get access to the tasks, right? This is the method which is displaying our task. So if I'm to save this and go back to our application, refresh, and there's something, okay, task controller does not exist. Okay, let me okay, we forgot to import this. So to import this, we use this namespace up here. So we can just copy that, and then up here we can say use that namespace and then the name of the class, which is task controller right here. I'm going to copy this and paste it here, right here, Control V. Now we have access to this task which we are using here. So if I'm to save, refresh, you can see now we are back in business. Everything is now in place. So we can do the same for these other methods, like this create. Up to here, we can cut that and paste it inside. So we're gonna call that a different function. So we say public Control V. It's going to be public function. I'm going to call it create, and it returns, this one only returns a create view. It is for displaying the create task form like that, and we can then use it here, Control save, and then we can pass in an array here with task controller, and then we can say class, and then we specify that class name, which is create. So here, this name that we specified here, or you could name it whatever you want. Again, just name it create. So if I'm to save this and refresh, and so if I go to create task, I'm supposed to see that that method is used to display this form. So it's working, and we can keep on doing the same. So I'm going to fast forward this. so that we don't waste much time. So okay, so we have separated our logic from the routes, which is what is recommended, which is what the controller does. So it separates that logic from the routes. So we can now see this is now cleaner, and yeah, this is what you would want to do. All right, so if I'm to go back, reload, and it's not supposed to give me any problems if I create a task. After adding a controller, and then we can submit this. You can see now it's working, and then if we complete this, completed, and you can see it shows up down here, and then if we can delete that, you can see everything is still working. Here, create task, it's working. Cancel, it's canceling. Create task is working. Go back to the home page, it's working. And so basically this is how you create this. If you feel this is beneficial, you can leave a like, leave a comment, and you can also consider subscribing to the channel. I hope to see you in my next tutorial. For now, I'm out. See you.